in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for that short delay. My apologies. Good afternoon and welcome to the Sustainable Materials Management Webinar Series, a joint effort between the National Recycling Coalition and the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. My name is Wayne Bowen. I'm the Program Manager for the Recycling Market Center and will serve as your moderator today. We would like to extend a special thanks to Bob Hollis of the Mobius Network for providing the webinar management software for this series, and Lisa Ruggiero and Laura Flagg of the National Recycling Coalition for assisting the RMC with webinar promotion and technical support. Today's webinar provides an update on the recycled paper and plastics commodities markets. Our presenters today are Mylinda Jacobsen and Greg Rudder, who I will introduce in a moment. Following the presentations, we will conduct a question and answer session. If you have a question or comment, please use the GoToWebinar dialog box located in the control panel on your screen. You may also use the dialog box to request assistance if you're experiencing technical difficulties during the webinar. Please note that an edited version of this webinar will be made available for viewing via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center websites. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters. Mylinda Jacobsen has been the purchasing manager for Envision Plastics since 2004, which is based in Reidsville, North Carolina. Envision is a leading producer of FDA-approved high-density polyethylene plastics with a workforce of 115 at two plants, one in the Reidsville location and the other in Chino, California. Mylinda's global purchasing experience has resulted in more than doubling the company's supplier base, facilitating their growth to the #2 company in its sector. Mylinda's efforts saved the company millions in yearly overhead by spearheading strategic freight partner network, raising feedstock quality nationwide as curriculum designer/trainer for 87 vendors, and by cutting their waste disposal costs by opening domestic markets for recycling byproducts. Greg Rudder is the editor of PPI Pulp and Paper Week and RISI. He has covered U.S. and export recovered paper for more than 20 years, containerboard for 7, uncoated free sheet for 4 years, tissue for 10 years, and newsprint for 3 years. A Pepperdine University graduate, he was a daily newspaper reporter for 12 years before joining PPI Pulp and Paper Week. He has interviewed various CEOs at top industry companies and visited numerous mills and recycling converting plants globally. And so I'm going to have Greg start off with his update on the paper commodity markets.
Great, thank you, Wayne. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm going to focus today on OCC, which of course is the benchmark or key grade in recovered paper in the United States. That'll be point one, and then also focus as well on China because of the influence that China has on the recovered paper market in the United States. Roughly 40% of the volume of recovered paper and demand each year ends up being exported, with a large share of that 40% going to China. And then also, just final 2 points that I'll touch upon as well will be, the ISRI specs and processors, and a few kind of miscellaneous issues that are important in the market today for recovered paper. And then also touch on Pulp and Paper Week, the pricing that I do and that we do on recovered paper and the methodology that we employ. I'm going to move through the slides fairly quickly. There's a lot of information in them, and I hope at your leisure that you can take the time as you need to read them and understand and use the information as you see fit. But I'm going to, like I said, focus on those main points and then move through the slides fairly swiftly. So, great. Yeah, here's the fast facts. Just a quick couple of points here. The 52 million tons of demand last year in the United States, it breaks down with the 30 on the domestic, which is consumed by the pulp, by the paper and board, as well as the ink pulp mills in the United States. And then 21 million that's exported with, again, the big share, 69% of that 21 million that went on to China. Interestingly, the 2015 mill consumption was the highest since 2010, and that was because of the increase in containerboard capacity that we've been seeing in the industry since 2013. There have been about 5 or 6 machine startups, most of them converted machines, but also a few new ones, actually 6 or 7. And as a result of that, that has led to the increase in the overall consumption by U.S. mills in 2015 back to it was highest since 2010. And then just one last point, if I could. First quarter consumption, the year got off to a, in terms of consumption, fairly good start as it relates to China. The exports from the U.S. to China were up. U.S. mill consumption was flat to partly down. So as a result, the overall 1Q consumption of recovered paper was up and totaled out at about 13 million, which tracks toward, on 4 quarters, the 52 million that was in 2015. Let's see, moving forward. Wayne, can I move it or?
I have the P&PW pricing update slide.
Excellent. Yep. And this just gives a little look at the pricing. Prices last peaked in recovered paper in the United States in 2011. At the same time in 2012, 13, and 14, the prices moved down and haven't really moved back up anywhere near where they were at the last peak in 2011. Part of the reason, I believe, for the decline in the 11, 12, in the 12, 13, 14 years was related to China. China's buying of U.S. recovered paper in each of those 3 years declined sequentially. So as a result, that coupled with the what happened on the prices, I think that's a key reason why the levels on the domestic market have not moved up, and they're running at 30 to 40, about 30 to 40% less than what they were at the peak in 2011 across the main grades. Anyway, this just shows you a quick couple of points on OCC and mix. You see the export level in May of 16 is below where it was a year earlier. If you shoot back to the top line there, Southeast OCC, and I put Southeast in there because that's where the containerboard, large amount of the 36 million ton a year U.S. containerboard capacity is located. You can see a slight increase on the FOB price, May 16, 85 versus the 80 in May 15 in the Southeast. So, and then, they're moving down. Next slide. And that leads into the OCC forecast. I'm not a forecaster. I collect the prices, but our forecaster, Hannah Zhao, for recovered paper, has estimated that for the 2016 average versus 2015 average for OCC, that U.S. mills will pay a bit more by $3. And then interestingly, she sees the import OCC price to China, which again isn't all from the United States. On average, about 40% or so of Chinese recovered paper imports come from the United States. She's showing that going down. So I've been tracking this for 20 years, and I don't think that's happened before. Usually what occurs is that the OCC price domestic on average in a given year either goes up or goes down the same as what occurs on the for the Chinese price, the exports to China. So anyway, we'll see if that plays out that way. But anyway, again, just to recap, her forecast and the forecast at RISI, Hannah Zhao, is OCC domestic up in 2016 for the year versus 2015, and then down as it relates to U.S. exports to China. The key on the OCC up in the United States is the additional capacity. There have been 2 machines started up since September in the Midwest for containerboard, and both those mills use OCC, and of course one of them primarily uses mixed paper. And that's been the reason for, I think, why the forecast is for it to move up in 16 versus 15. And we're seeing that so far through the first through the first 5 months, where OCC is running a bit higher so far this year than it did last year. And moving forward. Yeah, just a quick one here. Again, this shows the size in 15 versus 10. Big changes here. OCC share is larger in 15 versus 10 because of the reduction in printing and writing paper capacity in the United States and the recycled content that was attached to that. At the same time, as you can see, ONP fourth down. Newsprint capacity has continued to drop since 2001 on an incremental and large basis. And as a result, so has the demand in the United States by mills for ONP. Back to the new capacity, 2 machines since September, Valparaiso, Indiana with Pratt. That's a mill that runs on about 60-40, 60% mixed paper, 40% OCC. That's a containerboard machine. And then also Corrugated Supplies has converted what used to be a printing and writing paper mill in Alsip, Illinois, that FutureMark ran, into a corrugating medium machine. And there's roughly 575,000 tons of demand from those 2 machines started up, like I say, since September. An offset to that, though, interestingly, that occurred by year end at the end of last year, WestRock shut several mills, Newburgh, Oregon, Coshocton, Uncasville, and those shuts pretty much equaled the increases from Valparaiso and Alsip, interestingly enough. So haven't seen new capacity in the Midwest in years, and now there are 2 machines starting up with another one. Going to the next slide, I'll show that's planned to start up as well in containerboard in Milwaukee. Yeah, important slide here shows the capacity additions as it relates to machines that run recycled content. I went back to 15 and then to show the 16 startup with Corrugated Supplies at Alsip that I just mentioned. And then in 17, you can see the Trois-Rivières, Quebec, Kruger containerboard machine, as well as the other one that I was just alluding to in Milwaukee. Corrugated Supplies plans a containerboard machine there as well. So those would be increases to the demand for OCC in the United States. So anyway, in my opinion, again, an important slide, especially if you're a supplier of recovered paper in the U.S. And this just shows the numbers, the breakdown. Very, U.S. milk consumption doesn't jump around. It's been running, as you can see, since 2010 at right around the 30 million. Of course, in 10, 31.5. But the expectation for 16 is that it'll go up again slightly. Again, I'm not a forecaster, but assuming it would get up to 30.9 or maybe 30.95, that would just be a guesstimate. But that's the way it looks as it relates to the new capacity that's started up. And here's another one, again, to look at your own leisure, of course. Here's a breakdown of on the buy side, the mills and the largest ones in North America. Just one interesting point to leave you with. 7 of the 10 were involved in acquisitions since 2013 and or adding converted PMs or new PMs. So very active, the largest consumers in North America, with, of course, IP at the top. Just under 6 million tons. And again, it's a 52 million ton market overall in terms of demand, so 30 million domestic. And yeah, and firing forward to China, we're all aware of the economic issues there and the uncertainty. As I mentioned, the decline in the buying from China over that 3-year period. That turned around in 15. So you had 12, 13, 14, China reduced its exports from the United States. But then in 15, it increased. And so far in 1Q, the U.S. Exports to China were up 8%. So that would lead me to believe that by year end, most likely, U.S. exports to China would still be, would be higher in 16 than 15. So that'd be 2 years in a row. But again, uncertainty in China as it relates to the economy, and that all flows down to making, to the pulp and paper and board business there as well. So very sensitive as it relates to how to judge where that demand situation is going to go in China. We saw the largest downtime ever by Chinese mills during Chinese New Year. I'm just citing a few details that I thought were important. Of course, the renminbi devaluation we've seen, we've watched that over the last 6 to 9 months. 2 near stock market crashes. Yeah, some big issues in trying to understand what's going on in China and how that influence will be on the U.S. market related to recovered paper. And this just gives you a kind of a graphic that shows the 2011 peak, the last peak, and then where it is, where the prices are down from there as of today on recovered paper, according to the Pulp and Paper Week. It looks like if you took the value in 11 and put it at $1 on say OCC, today that price would probably be again on an apples to apples basis at about 70 cents. So there's been a good amount of price that's been lost off the peak number in 2011 on domestic as well as export. And this just shows that. So. And as I mentioned, the export fall off, so we can move forward. This will give you the specifics, though, hopefully is useful to you. And I'm going to now fire forward into the last couple of points. With the pricing the way it has transpired, it's been tough on on processors in the single stream business. We saw waste management with shuts last year, and those shuts continue this year as it relates to plants. There's some looking at what's the MRF of tomorrow going to look like, how's it going to be different. The concern is that the incoming, there's more and more incoming material that's dirtier for MRFs, and as a result, the cost to go out the backside with a good quality recovered paper is higher, and that's tough when pricing is not rising at a similar rate to what your cost is. So that's in an essence, that's the issue that processors face, especially those running MRFs. And a couple other side point related issues. Dirty MRFs, they have been looked at 5 or 6 different places in the country. That's another issue, and that especially speaks to most likely an even lower quality in the end recovered paper. And then extended producer responsibility, which is under the light in Canada, both in British Columbia and Ontario, and that's an effort where the recycling business is pretty much there's funding that comes from the end producers of paper and board products, whether it be cartons or corrugated boxes, that would help finance the recovered paper segment. So that's another issue that's out there. It's not a huge issue, but it's certainly one that's important to look at and follow. And then, of course, ISRI, PSI, the paper stock industries, about 1.5 years ago, looked at the grade definitions, and this was partly related to the lower quality that was coming into play for mixed paper and old newspapers. And as a result, the old newspapers number 6 through 8 grades have been eliminated, and the additions, there's now an addition of two grades: sorted residential paper, which is kind of considered a replacement for the old ONP 6 and 8, if you will, and then sorted clean news, which is a higher quality ONP, similar to an ONP 9. And then mixed paper as well. The change there was eliminating the 1, 2, and 3 grades and just having one mixed paper grade. So those changes are in effect in the market. So that's a noteworthy change. Haven't seen that kind of a change in the definitions that ISRI puts out for recovered paper in years. So, and I also wanted to touch in my final comments related to Pulp and Paper Week and our pricing of recovered paper. This page here will just give you a little sense of how many materials we cover. I talk with about 80 contacts or more each month. We come out on the 5th of the month, and so I'm surveying heavily on 1 through 4. Just a page for later if you're interested in how exactly I do what we do for recovered paper pricing. This gives a little insight. So, and then also in the last year, on the next slide, for PPW as it relates to our pricing, we made a couple of methodology changes. One is I now have flexibility as it relates to the date. We come out on the 5th, but if there's a Monday, or excuse me, if there's a 4th that falls on a Friday, then we publish on the 4th, because that gives a full week of pricing. It takes about 3 full days to take a look at the market with the 80 plus contacts. So that was one methodology change that we made official. And then secondly, what we've done is I'm doing mid-month checks on the marketplace as well to get kind of a quick lay of the land glimpse of, how does OCC, how does SOP, how do grades L&P mix, how do they look generally around the 20th of the month. And then if I find that there's input that's relevant enough, I'll consider that, of course, when I'm doing the price collection on the 1st through 5th. So just a couple changes there on methodology. And I appreciate your time greatly and wish all you guys, of course, the best of luck with your business. My email is there. If you ever need to email me and ask questions related to our pricing or the recovered paper market, please feel free. And I thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, Greg. I apologize for that feedback issue. What I'm doing is muting the people who aren't speaking and just allowing the speaker to be on mic. So there might be a little delay here when I'm switching back and forth when we're conversing with questions. So, Mylinda, before we start with you, there are a couple of questions or clarifications needed from Greg. So I'm just going to go ahead and get those from Greg. The first one, Greg, is what are the PMs in your slide? Does that mean a paper mill? And the other one is, I'm going to go back to the first slide. There's some question on the math on the 69% to China. They think the person who asked the question is that should that be 40%? So let me unmute you here and I'll let you respond to that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm sorry. The 40% refers to the 52 million tons. That 40% of those are exported. So the 40% of the 52 is, is 21 million tons. And then of that 21 million, 69% of that 21 million is what ends up in China. So I hope that's clear. Yes, I'm sorry about that and mentioning the 40%. I was talking about overall exports of recovered paper or represent 40% of the, the 52 million. So, and that gets out, like I said, to the 21 export, and then 69%, which would come out to be, approximately 14 million tons goes to China. So 14 million tons of the 52 ends up going to China. So I hope that helps. And then as it relates to PM, that would be paper machine. So my reference is to PM.
Okay. What is the increase in dirty paper attributable to? Is it higher percent from curbside?
Well, all I can speak to is why there are cities that are looking at the dirty MRFs, and what it appears to be is they're trying again to do it. They want a fast process to move, move through material and then pull out what they can to recycle and benefit on the sale of that as well. So, but what's being found is that the dirty MRFs, the material, is just it's basically garbage with recovered paper in there, whereas now single stream is bringing in the what's been pulled out already to some degree, so it's not as dirty. I hope that's useful as it relates to dirty MRFs.
Okay, Greg, thank you. That's it for the questions for now. So we're going to hand it over to Mylinda. She does not have slides at this point. I think the market's changing so fast that it doesn't matter anyway. So, Mylinda, you are on.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Mylinda Jacobsen, and I do not have slides, and I'm going to try to not bore you to death with some of the statistics I'm going to talk about. So before we get officially started into the meat of the presentation, I wanted to preface my talk with I am an HDPE buyer. I work in polyethylene. My presentation is going to focus a lot on HDPE. It's going to touch on PET and polypropylene, and I'm certainly available for questions, offline if you have any questions about any of those resins, but just thought I would go ahead and throw that out there. So that being said, if you're a recycler or you work at the MRF, you know that it is a very robust HDPE market right now, and it's kind of interesting. It's an interesting time. It's changing very rapidly. And, just to start with our forecast and then talk about how you come up with a forecast, because I have this conversation every day with recyclers, some of them on this webinar. But, our forecast is saying basically that we are sort of at the height of the HDPE market. Maybe, there might be a little bit of an increase left yet this month, but probably not. And then we're looking at a downward trending forecast for the rest of 2016 into 2017. And so just to talk about how we come up with that, there's a lot of factors that go into making a forecast. So I want to talk about some of those forecasting tools and how they influence what we're looking at. And for right now, we're talking about polyethylene. So one of the first things we would do is look at the HDPE spot virgin resin market prices and the trends. And so, flat to up on the spot market, but the prices have stabilized. Spot ethylene versus HDPE prices, and this is like the raw materials to make HDPE, is flat to down. So then when you look at like fixed price contract indications, and believe me, there's a lot of slides that show this, but, flat to up on contract prices. So all of this goes into our thinking before we ever put a price on the bales. And then there are external benchmark publication forecasts, and those sort of show a mixed bag. And for March, just to talk about the March CDI index shows a slow, steady down for the balance of 2016. There are other indexes that show up at 4, which is what we're sort of seeing right now, and then trickling down for the balance of 2016. So as we look at that and we think, all right, we want prices to go down, then there are ethylene inventories at the producer level, which they're up and they're decreasing inventory. So when you look at that, at today's demand levels, HDPE virgin inventory is currently at around 30 days, which is right on average. So the CDI, going back to another thing, the CDI showed no increase in April, but then flat to down for the balance of the year. If you are dealing in HDPE and PET, you know that prices did indeed move up in April, and that that I think is a supply and demand factor. But and then in May, another increase happened. So, we weren't quite expecting that one. And then again, that is the supply and demand fundamentals took over there. But I know it sounds sort of contradictory, but the supply and demand fundamentals should take over again and drive the price back down over the balance of 2016 as we see demand start to soften for recycled HDPE and virgin HDPE. Crude oil is still a factor in plastic prices, but overall supply and demand economics will become more of a driver, has like the overall market softens for the balance of the year. We certainly see this in PET, where PET tracks more closely to crude than what high density does. But there's also a new PET processing plant that just opened, interestingly enough, about 3 blocks away from our plant in Reidsville, North Carolina. So I was talking with the guys at that plant today in prep for this and asked them if their plant, starting to buy PET bales should drive the price up a little bit. And it might, was theirs, which was a great answer. But we're probably looking at a slight uptick in PET, and then it will track with crude, which might be expected to drop after we get through the summer driving season. Polypropylene, again, also declining for the remainder of the year. There are some propylenes that will continue to actually increase in price. Those are not typically found at the MRF. But I think overall in plastic, we should see like plastic processors, sellers should be looking at good May. Probably those prices might extend into the first part of June and then down for the remainder of the year. And that's pretty much down and dirty on the price on the forecast for plastics. I don't have too much to add, but open to answering some questions.
Okay, thanks, Mylinda. Again, if you have some questions, use the GoToWebinar dialog box. So we do have one more question for Greg, so I'm going to pose that question, and hopefully we'll get some more in for Mylinda. Greg, are the newly defined paper categories replacing the old, or will they be published in parallel for a short period of time? When will the new indices take place? Greg, are you there? Greg? Okay. Okay, Mylinda, can you break down the CDI index for the layperson? What does CDI stand? What does the index measure?
I can't break it down for the layperson, but it's too much to get into on this call. But I'm happy to talk with somebody offline about it. It would take a while.
Melinda, you might not be able to answer this one. Are there any markets for PVC or polystyrene plastics?
I do know of some markets for styrene, especially if it's high impact polystyrene. PVC, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know any good ones. Not saying there aren't, I just don't know them off the top of my head.
How about for flexible PVC?
Yeah, I'm not a PVC girl. But depending on what part of the country you're in, there might be some, instead of like a direct market, a good exporter might be able to help, or a good broker might have the right in for that.
Okay, how about nylon 6 or nylon 6.6 pricing?
I'm a post-consumer girl, Wayne. These aren't post-consumer plastics.
I think maybe another webinar will kind of get into the specialty plastics. I think that would be a good one. There's always questions about that. So we might do
Yeah,
that.
no, I'm happy to help with injection or hips or something like that, but PVC and nylon, it's a little out of my purview.
Melinda, as an HDPE buyer, what are you looking for in terms of quality?
Well, our, what we're seeing right now is lower quality than what we would like. It was similar to what Greg was touching on in the paper. I don't know one mill buyer who isn't preaching the quality message. Ideally, a load of plastic, a load of HDPE bottles has less than 10% contaminants, and that would include the cap and the label. Maybe that's not reality, but that's what we shoot for. But, that sometimes in this load of plastic, load by load, especially color, you can see contaminants in excess of 25%.
Oh. Okay, that seems to be it for the questions. So we're going to end at this point. Thank you again, Greg, if you're still there, and Mylinda. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to make these presentations. So again, this webinar, like all the webinars in this series, has been recorded and will be made available via YouTube links on both the National Recycling Coalition and Recycle It Market Center websites. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you'll join us for next month's webinar, and please visit the NRC and RMC websites for schedule updates. So thank you for joining us and have a great day.